This is my week 5 final project for Intercultural Communications with Professor Priscilla Jensen. The date is July 31st, 2014. I had the privilege of traveling to Tomei City, Miyagi Prefecture, Japan. The intercultural experience that I gained from traveling to another country is overwhelming. The differences between American and Japanese culture exist in almost every aspect. By traveling to Japan, I was immersed in the culture. Everything from language to food to architecture to religion to family life to just community life. I got to experience it all. In light of the studies that I've had here in this class, I'm able to now look deeper at the intercultural exchange and the way that I communicated when I was in Japan, and the way that the Japanese community communicated with me while I was there. The cultures are very different between our two countries, and so I was a little apprehensive about going into the culture, not knowing any of the language, not understanding or even being able to interpret any of the writing, as it's completely different than our alphabet and our way of speaking and our way of writing. As I said, I was able to travel to Japan as part of an exchange program called Sister Cities International. Sister Cities International exists to maintain an exchange between cities that are similar in size and similar in economic status and similar in government and population. I'm an employee of the city of Southlake, Texas, and so when the opportunity came for an employee to chaperone a group of teenagers to Japan, I applied for that opportunity. I was chosen and chaperoned a dozen teenagers to Japan for 1 week. We were able to stay in the homes of the host there. Each student teenager, and as well as me, received a host home. I stayed in the home of the local fire chief, Mr. Sasaki, and was able to just experience the culture while we were there. The relationships between the cities encourages mutual understanding of economics, cultural, civic, political, and just general relationships between our people so that we can get to know each other. As I attempted to prepare myself for this trip, I thought about things such as the language, and so I investigated websites where I was able to learn some of the common sayings, where I was able to sound out some of the necessary sayings that you would need for going there, where I was able to look at some of the cultural expectations, things that Americans don't think of, such as bowing to one another in greeting, such as the formal greeting of bowing to your guest. Also exchanging gifts. The Japanese have different ideas about the exchanging of gifts, just as a thank you for even coming into their house. And so when I was chosen to go, I imagined that language would probably be one of the biggest obstacles. I only speak English, and therefore I found some websites, I found some books, and I spoke to some people that had actually already been to Japan as well to try to figure out exactly what I would need to do to fit into their culture as I traveled to their country. After a few weeks of practicing and thinking about the language, preparing myself, we left on our trip and we departed, headed for Tokyo on a non-stop flight from Dallas, Texas. I escorted the dozen teenagers, and when we landed, we were immersed into Japanese culture. The Narita Airport is a large airport, and as with most airports, we were able to see plenty of things in the English language, and so we weren't too worried, and we were able to find our way safely to the customs gate to check in with immigration, to take care of all the necessary paperwork and collect our baggage. And when we exited the gates, we met with our host, Mr. Seiko. Mr. Seiko is a representative of Sister Cities International, and he met us there in the airport and was to escort us on our trip to Tomei City. Tomei City is about 3 hours away by train, and so we had to travel by subway from Narita Airport to Tokyo Station train station. As we exited the airport, of course everything became more and more Japanese. Not near as much English was around, and so we stuck a little closer to our host, Mr. Seiko, who greeted us, and the group that came with him was very gracious, very welcoming, very formal in their greeting, as I discussed earlier, to bow to your guest, to exchange even a small gift. When they greeted us at the airport, they had gifts for all of us. We arrived at Tokyo Station, and the train station is unlike anything I had ever seen before. Growing up in Texas, train travel is not very common. Not subway. We do have some mass transit in the bigger cities, such as Dallas and from Fort Worth, but the train station at Tokyo Station sees typically about 1 million people a day. And so I was just completely astonished at the number of people that came and went from Tokyo Station, that just traveled back and forth, and it intrigued me just to stand and watch the people go by. And all of the men seemed to be dressed in white shirts and ties and business attire, all carrying briefcases, and all seemingly headed somewhere in a hurry. No time to stop and talk, and no time to look around, but I know that they're used to that kind of daily travel. So when we arrived at Tokyo Station, Mr. Seiko purchased lunch for us all, and the cultural experience of food began there. I was served a bento box with about 15 different items in it, including beef tongue and seaweed and sushi and salad and eggs and some duck meat. So it was a different experience, and I'm not shy about eating anything that they offered me, so that was a wonderful part of the food experience even there early on that first day. Our train trip to Tomei City began. The train was plush. It was nice. It was very fast, and we traveled on the express train all the way to Tomei City. And when we arrived, the greetings continued, because the host families had arrived to greet all of the kids and myself at the cultural center there in the center of town once we arrived. So we arrived in Tomei City, and the host families greeted each of the teenagers and myself with a gift. They were so gracious and were ready to have us live in their homes for a week. The pace in Tomei City is decidedly slower than the pace that we had experienced in Tokyo. The millions and thousands of people that we had seen in Tokyo Station now were just the host families there to greet us. And Tomei City is similar in size to that of Southlake, Texas, about 30,000 people in the immediate city. And so we noticed that the language is now completely Japanese. Everything that we see written, there's no English signs to assist us. Most of the people, of course, were speaking Japanese, yet our host families had taken time to learn enough English to communicate with us as they hosted us in their homes. The teenagers departed and went with their hosts, and I went with my host, Mr. Sasaki, to his home. As I stated earlier, Mr. Sasaki is the fire chief of the local city there and is a supervisor of over about 500 firemen in the entire county area. And so, since I'm a policeman and he's a fireman, we had something in common automatically in public safety, and he took me to his home. I noticed that when we arrived at the home is what I had imagined a Japanese house would look like. A gray and black colored building with lots of glass and what appeared to be kind of paper thin walls, and the shape of the house was similar to a pagoda or a Buddhist temple with upswept eaves and very fine, intricate woodwork on the outside. And so Mr. Sasaki invited me in and reminded me that I should remove my shoes, which is not something that I'm used to doing in my own home. But I did notice that there was a place where the entire family had put their shoes, and so I obliged and of course did the same thing. These small little cultural differences are something obviously that a person would have to get used to traveling to another country, but something I was happy to do and thankful that my host was allowing me to stay in his home. He showed me in and took me to the what I believe to be the master bedroom. It was a large room, and probably about 10 feet by 15 feet. The floors were made in the bedroom of a grass mat, and they were very soft and almost squishy under your feet. And the mattress was laid in the middle of the room, a thin kind of a roll-out down mattress. Not like my king-size bed that is real thick and heavy, but it was just laid directly on the floor. As I looked around the edge of the room and around the ceiling line, I noticed carvings, artwork, including landscapes and different kinds of nature scenes, Buddhist temple scenes, different colored paintings, very bright, vivid colors, and all of the artwork and all of the just intricate architecture just in the man's house alone was very impressive. As he went to introduce me to his family, I noticed another cultural difference immediately. And it's the difference between American and Japanese culture. The fact that the entire family lived in one house. And by entire family, I mean Mr. Sasaki and his wife, his mother, their son, their daughter, their son-in-law and daughter-in-law, and 2 grandkids all lived in the house. So 4 generations were living in this one house, and they just seemed so happy with that. The reason I say that that's different than American culture is that it seems to me that we do not respect our elderly near as enough or near as much as Japanese folks do. I have been a part of seeing my grandma and grandpa move into assisted living and pass away in a nursing assisted living center. Mr. Sasaki's mother is about 84 years old, and she was living in the house, cooking. She even mended a pair of socks for me. She noticed there was a hole in one of my socks, and so she sewed it up. And she gets to experience life around her great-grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren get to experience life around their great-grandmother. My visit to Japan was the first time that I had been to a culture where Christianity was in the minority. Almost everyone who believes in anything believes in Buddha, and they have Buddhist temples and references to Buddha just all over the place in Japan. As a matter of fact, one of the things that the host families seemed to want to do was to take us to the Buddhist temples. Mr. Sasaki and his family took me to 3 different Buddhist temples, one that was carved into the side of a mountain, one that was that encompassed about 8 temples all the way up a mountain. And so we hiked up the mountain and we saw all these beautiful lush gardens and wonderfully decorated buildings, and the temples themselves were dedicated to the particular Buddha that they would pray to for a particular thing. So it could be a particular body part, it could be a particular request such as money or job, it could be a particular need that they have in their life. And so I was a bit confounded by the fact that there were certain Buddhas for certain body parts, and you had to travel to the specific temple to be able to pray for a certain body part or a certain thing that you were needing. And so that began the discussion between myself and Mr. Sasaki, my host, about how my God is everywhere. My God is with me at all times. I wouldn't have to travel to a specific temple to pray for my eyes or a specific temple to pray for my stomach. And so I was able to witness to Mr. Sasaki and his family. In some respects, I think he listened, and in some respects, I think he didn't. But it began a relationship with me and him that we're able to talk online and still continue to communicate even across the ocean. And I get a chance to witness to him even on email and the internet. One of the other things I noticed about Japanese culture is that all the adults drink alcoholic beverages. They were rather shocked that I did not drink at all, and I don't believe I was being rude and turning them down, but I did notice that the first time when he asked me in his home if I would have a drink, and I told him no, I would just have tea, that they not only did not ask me again, but they did not bring it out in front of me again, and I didn't see them using alcohol the whole time I was there. One of the ladies, the host family from a different host, even remarked to me during one of our suppers that I must be so sad because I don't drink alcohol. And I just explained to her that it had to do with my own personal beliefs about alcohol and what it does, and that it has nothing to do with my happiness, that I derive my happiness from my God and from my situation and not from alcohol. The community around Tomei City was the most sparkling clean community that I had ever seen. There's trash receptacles everywhere, and apparently everyone uses them because there's not a bit of trash. And after reading about the Japanese culture, I understand that they are geared more towards community rather than us, who are geared more towards individual. And that can be seen around their community as they take care of it. They have pride in it. The parks were just sculpted and beautiful. The streets were swept and clean. No one threw trash on the ground. No one left trash out. And they took great care of their community and respected their property, and they respected the land, and they respect their country in that fashion. The experience is just, it's a wonderful experience. I would suggest to anyone, if you have the availability or the opportunity to go on a cultural exchange trip, to go on a trip like that. Put yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit and try to see something about someone else's culture. Experience their culture, get involved in their culture, and they'll want to get involved with yours too. There were plenty of questions about Texas and about, did I ride a horse to work, and even the things that they see on television that tell them that everything in Texas is Western and everything in Texas is Old West, and so therefore I should be wearing a cowboy hat, which I occasionally do. But I did not take one to Japan with me. The chance that I had to go and just get acquainted with people from another country, to see how friendly they are, to be able to be friendly to them, to experience the food and the language and just something different that I had never seen before, really was a blessing in my life. And I would suggest to anybody that has the opportunity to go to experience a different culture, to work at it, and to just let yourself be able to be a witness for Christ in a place that doesn't know Christ. what a great opportunity it was for me to be able to tell these host families what my real joy was, and just the opportunity to go and to be around them is part of that joy. Thank you.